It doesn't specifically say no scooters. Hey, Richard Vegan here. Quebec is done! Au revoir, Quebec! And bonjour, Ontario. On day 20, it was raining really hard, and I was staying with my friends Melanie, Mariette, and Jimmy in their cabin in the woods in Quebec. And what a wonderful day. They cooked vegan cookies for me, we sang some songs, and I learnt about Acadian history. That was pretty special, so thank you. Day 21, I said goodbye to my Acadian friends, and I pushed on. So today I did 62.5 kilometers down a hill, and the speed limit was 50. Well, that was pretty scary. I was holding on for dear life. And I got to this little town called Cabano, and I watched the sunset over the lake. Very beautiful. Day 22, I was a little bit naughty. I'm on the highway, and I think there's certain portions in Quebec you can't be on the highway. So, let's see if the police show up. Ooh, living dangerously. So this police officer stopped me. He escorted me down the highway, which was pretty cool. And he turned out to be a really nice guy. And he gave me a snack bar and wished me well and said that he'd follow me online. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Policeman. I'm eating your snack. Day 23. I started off in Rivière-du-Loup. And I stopped by a shop. And a man called Jeff, the manager there, he gave me a fleur-de-lis. It's the Quebec provincial flag. So I was heading along the banks of the St. Lawrence River, and it was gorgeous. It wasn't like a river, it was just like the ocean. And the wind was pushing me along. It was beautiful. And I could see in the distance that there was a farm approaching. Literally at the driveway to the farm, it clicked over to 1,000 Ks. I've just reached 1,000 Ks. That's 1,000 Ks I've pushed for animals. Uphill, against the wind, in the snow, in the rain, all for animal suffering. And as fate would have it, that 1,000 K marker is exactly here, and it's right by a dairy farm. Cows are enslaved, and their babies are taken away from them, so people can have their milk. We do not need to enslave animals. I've just pushed 1,000 Ks, eating nothing but plants. And it's brought me here, next to this farm. A dairy farm. That is a sign. Let's do better, people. Look at your actions. That was a moment of real mixed emotions. Amazing that I'd reached 1,000 kilometers, the furthest I'd ever been on a scooter. But then sadness that at that point, there were animals enslaved in that farm, in that dairy farm. Words really can't describe how I felt. Such elation, but then such sadness. And it really reaffirmed to me why I'm doing this trip. That I'm doing it for these animals. It doesn't have to be this way. Animals don't have to be enslaved. They don't have to be exploited. And it's important to say that farmers aren't the enemy. They're not people we need to fight against. They're people we need to educate, people we need to show. Show that life can be better and that we don't need to exploit animals for money. So day 24. I made it into the big city. I went past Quebec City and into Lévis. In the morning, I left the country and it started to snow. It's the end of April. Why is it snowing? Why are you snowing? And by the evening I was in the big city, and it was a shock to have this traffic, to have this noise, to have so many people around. Wow. People! Due to the snow and the rain, I got absolutely soaked. And so I stopped off and I got some lunch and I went to the bathroom and I dried myself off under the hand dryer. So one of those funny moments in life where there's me trying to dry my clothes under a hand dryer. Yeah, the customers in that shop must have thought I was crazy. Day 24 was also a big day. That was the longest I'd gone. That was 106 kilometers. And I dedicated that day for one of my friends, Mackenzie, whose dog had passed away. I want to dedicate this day, my biggest day so far. I want to dedicate that to Naylor. Mackenzie and Naylor, my heart is with you both. And I did that just to show that we're in this together. It doesn't matter where we are in the world, whether we've met in person, whether we're friends online. We're in this together and we need to support each other. We need to show that we're united, and we're united for animals, because without that, animals don't stand a chance. Day 25, I left the hostel that I'd stayed in, and one of the brackets broke on my scooter. And I was kind of stranded. A bracket on my scooter snapped. I was kind of stuck. And a Frenchman called Guy came and helped me. And I went to a local bike store, and Martin there helped me. So it just shows you in moments of need, people can be so caring and so giving. So thank you. Thank you to that man, and thank you to that bike shop. Thank you for letting me use your workshop and to fix my scooter. After I'd left the bike shop, the actual cage that holds the water bottle on broke. I couldn't believe it. I thought I've just been at a bike shop. And something else that was very funny, I bought some new gloves and I didn't check them. And it was only that night I realized I actually had 2 left gloves. Moral of the story, always check what you're buying. Check what you're buying, people. Later in the afternoon, I was coming through this lovely little village and I saw a bell. And the bell was made in England and was now in Quebec. And I thought that was amazing because I was made in England and now at that moment I was in Quebec. That's to celebrate my trip through Quebec. Bring me luck, bring me luck. Day 26, I got pulled over by the police in the rain. I did have a bag on my head, so that could have been the reason. So I've just been stopped by the police. It's probably because I got a bag on my head. They pulled me over. They wanted to know what I was doing. They wanted to see my ID. And then they left me standing in the rain. And it was only when I kind of approached them, they said, no, you're not detained, you can leave. But it was really bizarre. That was the first moment where I thought something's not quite right. And I still don't know why they stopped me. But anyway, I carried on. And it was that day that I saw some cows in a field. This is what I'm trying for. I'm trying to spread the word for these guys. For all animals. They need us to be the voice. And again, that reinforced why I'm doing that trip. It was so visual. These cows had chains around their necks. And it showed to me, they're who we're fighting for. We are fighting for them and all animals to literally remove the chains from around their necks. You couldn't have a better visual representation. Enslaved and used for profit. It doesn't have to be this way. And we can change that. Together we can fight and we can change that. On day 26 as well, there was a lot of flooding. And I actually got turned away from a campsite. It was evening time, I had nowhere to stay, I was soaked, I was cold, and I got turned away. I couldn't believe it. The campsite had flooded, but they wouldn't let me put my sleeping bag down just in a little office or a little shed. So I carried on. But it was good because at the end, I found a nice hotel and I got warm and I met some wonderful people and I met Nugar, the dog, a wonderful little guy. So it ended up nice. Day 27, I wore a red poncho. Probably wasn't the best moment in my life, but I had to do it because of the rain. I'm wearing a poncho and I look terrible. I probably looked very bizarre, but it helped keep me dry. And later that day, I met a wonderful guy called Henry who stopped. His brother was traveling across Canada on a bike, and he stopped me, and he didn't speak much English, but I managed to speak to his wife. And he said, wait there, and he drove home, then drove back, and he gave me a swimming cap to use instead of a plastic bag to put on my head. So thank you, Henry. Day 28 was a good day. I made it to Montreal, and I stayed with this wonderful vegan activist, Rick, and Sam, and Willow, and Casper the parrot. It was awesome. It was a great night. We had a great conversation, and keep up the great work because you are an awesome vegan activist. Thank you, Rick. Day 29, the flooding in Quebec had closed the bridge. That essentially was the only bridge I could get across. So it took a little bit of thinking and a little bit of cunning, but I made it. And later that day, I met a wonderful vegan called Andre. She actually drove out to meet me, and we had something to eat together, and she donated to the cause. So thank you, Andre. It was really great to see you. I also got to use my solar charger for the first time. That was pretty cool. And it was amazing to use the sun's energy to power my smartphone to do these videos with. Later that day, I also came across a road that had been flooded. And I was going to do it. And I tried, but the water ended up being 2 feet deep. So eventually a truck came, and a guy called Francis, he helped me. We put the scooter in the back, and for about 50 yards he drove me through the flood, and it was deep, and I got to the side. I just hope that isn't classed as cheating to get a ride through the flood, but you gotta do what you gotta do. I'm carrying on. So day 30, the day I crossed the border, I finished Quebec, and I made it into Ontario. Au revoir, Quebec! Au revoir! And Ontario, it's just you and me now, big boy. It's just you and me. I'm coming for you. Amazing. I did it. A beautiful day, but a surreal day. As I was going that day, I hardly saw any traffic. All I saw was police cars and military tanks. That's all that drove by me. It was so surreal. It felt like I was in a war zone. And I guess the flooding was that bad, the military was called out. But it was a good day. I made it. I got Quebec done. And now I'm in Ontario. I found Quebec to be so beautiful. And the people there were so friendly. And the vegan community there really opened up. And there was a lot of vegans there who really supported me. You know who you are. We messaged. Thank you. And if it wasn't for those vegans, if it wasn't for people helping me, that trip would have been a lot harder. But Quebec was beautiful. And it just felt like I sailed through Quebec. And as this trip continues, the emotions, the feelings I get are so much more intense. The animals I meet, I'm literally seeing enslaved animals. And that's hard to deal with. But then on the other hand, I'm meeting amazing people. And so it's this strange juxtaposition of trying to wrestle with those sad emotions, but then having those really high moments and great moments. And seeing activists, vegans, and even non-vegans who are willing to change, who take on board the message. I think I've said it before, but I need to say it again, is that the only people who are going to help animals are people. And I think making enemies isn't the right way to go about that. We need to educate, and we need to spread the message. And we need to get people to help animals. And Quebec really highlighted that. Is that it didn't matter, even with a language barrier. We can still put forward that message of compassion. that message of love, regardless of nationalities, regardless of histories, regardless of language, regardless of our political views. We can still join together, and we can still be a voice, and we can still fight for animals. Go vegan.